Clara and James had recently marked their 5th wedding anniversary, a milestone that reflected both their triumphs and trials. Over the years, they had navigated the awkward adjustments of living together, the nerve-wracking introductions to each other's families, and the unavoidable turbulence that love often stirs. Though they occasionally stumbled, their bond remained unbroken. The intensity of their early days had mellowed into a comfortable routine, a rhythm they both knew and found content in. Yet, sometimes routine can hide the subtle fractures that grow quietly beneath the surface. One crisp evening, Clara prepared to attend a friend's bachelorette party, a lively event that promised a spa day, a lavish meal, and whatever spontaneous adventures the night might bring. James, ever respectful of her independence, trusted Clara completely. He had always believed that betrayal was beyond her, confident in the strength of their vows. He ensured that she felt adored, appreciated, and empowered, convinced that their relationship was rooted in mutual faith and unwavering loyalty. As she prepared to leave, he slipped his credit card into her hand, a small gesture to allow her to enjoy the night fully. Hours later, James received an alert on his phone, a sizable withdrawal from their joint account. For a brief moment, a flicker of surprise crossed his face. The amount was unexpected, but he brushed it off. Their financial comfort, built by his career, gave him the security to support Clara's happiness. If she wanted to splurge, he was happy to indulge her. Clara returned home well after midnight, the scent of perfume mingling with traces of sparkling wine. She was tired but glowing, her eyes alight with the stories of the night. She shared a few playful details about the evening before sinking into bed. James, ever the considerate partner, draped the comforter over her, dimmed the lights and settled beside her, comforted by the warmth of her presence. The week passed and their lives resumed their steady cadence as though nothing had changed. Then, one afternoon after a business meeting, James joined his colleagues for lunch at a quaint cafe. As they browsed the menu, the conversation veered unexpectedly into risque territory. Tales of exotic dancers and their clientele filled the air, punctuated with laughter. One coworker mentioned a man named Ethan, a male dancer who had recently performed at a bachelorette party. The stories he shared were bold and provocative, capturing the attention of the group. Ethan, they said, was a consummate professional, maintaining clear boundaries, until this particular bachelorette party, where one woman had made a daring offer, proposing a hefty payment for a private rendezvous. The table erupted in chuckles, but James felt something cold coil in his chest. The timing of the party, the withdrawal from their account, Clara's night out, it all aligned too perfectly. The description of the woman, elegant and poised, sounded so much like Clara that it sent a chill through him. He tried to dismiss the thought, convincing himself that it was all just coincidence. But then the conversation took a sharp turn. Ethan had mentioned that the woman was married, yet completely unbothered by her commitment. He had described her as captivating, spirited. James's pulse quickened, his hands grew damp, and the room seemed to tilt. He struggled to keep his composure, desperate to convince himself that he was reading too much into it, but the seed of suspicion had already taken root. When he returned home, Clara was still at her office. Lately, her late hours had become more frequent, and an uneasy knot settled in James's stomach. Hours passed and the door finally swung open. Clara kicked off her shoes, tossed her bag onto a chair and exhaled heavily. Work was relentless, she called out, rummaging through the kitchen. She turned to face James, his gaze fixed on her with an intensity that made her pause. "We need to talk," he said, his tone calm but resolute. Clara hesitated, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Can it wait? I'm starving. I could make us some stir-fry or we could get delivery," she trailed off, but James shook his head firmly. "This can't wait." She sat across from him, her expression weary but steady. "All right. What's this about?" she asked, her voice soft but her unease evident. James inhaled deeply, then asked the question that had been gnawing at him. "Clara, are you seeing someone else?" For a moment, her eyes flickered, just a brief crack in her calm facade, before she masked it with a practiced smile. "Why would you even suggest that?" she replied, her voice soft but measured. James told her everything. The conversation he had overheard at lunch, the story about Ethan, the bachelorette party, the withdrawal that seemed too well-timed to be a coincidence. He watched her face change as his words sank in. Her complexion drained and her calm demeanor wavered. Silence hung between them, thick and oppressive. Then, just as the tension reached its peak, a sharp knock on the door broke the stillness. Clara stiffened, her eyes darting toward the sound. James rose to answer, his heart hammering in his chest. He opened the door to find a man standing there, uncertain and tentative. "Ethan." "Clara," he said, his voice unsure. "You asked me to stop by tonight. Said it was important." Clara's breath hitched, her gaze shifting between Ethan and James. "Ethan, she began, but James interrupted. "You were waiting for him, weren't you?" His voice wasn't full of rage but raw pain. "Someone who isn't me." Clara's words faltered. Her silence, the weight of it, spoke volumes. James's expression hardened as he looked at her. "I looked into your eyes and you deceived me," he said softly, his voice cracking. Tears welled in Clara's eyes, but James turned away. "You should leave," he told Ethan, who nodded uncomfortably and slipped away. Clara tried to salvage the moment, to explain, but James held up a hand. "I didn't want to believe it," he said quietly. "But I had to know." Without another word, he walked to their bedroom, closing the door behind him with a soft but deliberate click that resonated with finality. The divorce proceeded swiftly. It emerged that Clara was expecting a child, conceived during her affair with Ethan, which had begun after the bachelorette party. James, though deeply hurt, remained resolute. He felt no connection to the child or the path Clara would now follow with her lover. The home remained his and Clara was left to rebuild, perhaps with her family or with Ethan. James, however, embraced the freedom he had reclaimed. To him, an unfaithful partner was nothing more than a stranger in his home, and he felt relief in shedding the weight of deceit. As he moved forward, he carried no resentment, only the quiet resilience of a man who had rediscovered his peace.